Okay, so today I was going to touch on a bit of money, finances, and homesteading. So, how do you make homesteading work financially? A lot of people run into wanting to homestead and end up having this mental roadblock of money or finances and thinking it can't work, or that they have to have a certain amount in the beginning. So let's dive into a few of these core questions under here. So, how much money do I need to start a homestead? My absolute honest answer for this would be none. You don't have to have money in order to start a homestead. You just start a homestead right where you are. All you do is change your mind on how you want to view your home. You view it as a legacy and you view it as a way to do things for yourself by yourself, and you're homesteading. A homestead doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy 5 million acres and live in isolation on top of a mountain and grow and raise everything on your own. It means you just change your mind on how you view your life. This is your life. You get to choose how you live it. And if homesteading is the way you want to go, then money isn't stopping you. I will tell you that right now. It is not a money thing. If it's a money thing, it's because you want something that you need to buy. And usually that's where people will think they have to have money in order to have a homestead or in order to start a homestead. And I'm telling you, if you have a place and if you have a decision that you made that you want to do homesteading, then you don't need any money to start. You just start where you are. So, as a side note to that, a lot of folks will kind of mention about, yes, I said 5 million acres, but you don't need 5 million acres either, even for having land. And that's usually what people's dreams are. I know our dream, we've grown to learn in retrospect of why we want land. And it is not to garden it all or to graze it all or to harvest all of the woods. It's to have space because really, honestly, homestead does not have to be big at all. You can have that 200-acre farm and only homestead like an acre of it, and you are way better off letting that be your homestead for multiple reasons. I'll go in that another time. But you don't need to let money be a problem because you don't have a problem if you don't think you need the money to start it. So don't let that stop you from changing your mind and learning what you can learn where you are and making the most of where you are too. A lot of times, um, diving into things, if we knew then what we know now, kind of thing, right? So make the most of where you are. And I think maybe that is a cultural thing that we have is we always want the next step. Like we have a certain place we're trying to be, and then once we get to that place, it's going to be, you know, perfect, or it's going to be the destination. You don't have to do anything else, or you've made it, right? There is no final made it. There is just keep going and learn and grow and enjoy the journey, as they say, which I don't love cliches, but if you learn to enjoy learning how to be a homesteading homemaker or a homesteader, you'll set yourself up for more success than you will for failure. So, how much money do you need to start? None. Start where you are. Change your mindset, and you've started your homestead. Can I make a living from a homestead, or is it just like a lifestyle choice? Yes, and yes. So, can you make a living from your homestead? Yes, you can. There's plenty of people that have done it. There are just as many ways of doing it as there are people. And It's so vast of a topic that it's way beyond this one question. But can you make a living from your homestead? My answer to that is yes. And or is it just a lifestyle choice? And again, I answered that. It is yes. It is a lifestyle choice as well. You do not have to make a living from your homestead. And you can still have that lifestyle choice because the lifestyle isn't necessarily about money. The lifestyle is about quality of life. It is about building your character. It is about building your legacy. It is not about building your bank account. So think a little more basics on why you want a homestead. Do you think you want a homestead because you're going to quit your job and you're going to make the $1 million on the homestead? I might steer clear of that idea because that's missing the core reason of homesteading in the first place. I would say the lifestyle choice is number one. And if you happen to make a living from your homestead, then that is icing on the cake. For me, I would not think of homesteading as a way to make my full time living. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, but I wouldn't quit my day job and think that's going to save, our family from everything, paying whatever bills that there are. I would just not depend on it to make a living to start with. But I would definitely dive into that lifestyle choice and keep that close to your heart. I have almost quit, and I know I've said this before, you can change your mind at any time. You don't have to commit to anything of homesteading or what you have on your homestead as a forever choice. But I remember 2 times in particular that I was thinking, "You know what? Let's just be done. Let's just sell it all and move to town, and we don't have to have all of these, challenges and worries and all the things at the moment that were going on." And those 2 times, I remember the first one primarily was the probably the bigger one, and that was when we were moving from state to state. So we were moving from our 25 acre property and moving to Tennessee. And we had the chance, when you're looking for a new home, like I said, you can homestead wherever you are. I didn't have to find a home that had another 25 acres. I could have homesteaded wherever I was, and I would have been, you know, great at it. But I would say I kind of learned from that because, kind of like I said before, when you dream about your homestead, I had to start dreaming of what it would be like without what I was doing, if that makes sense. So I had to think about what it would be like not to have the sheep. The sheep were like one of my dream animals. I wanted sheep so, so, so bad. When we were in the cul-de-sac, I had this dream. Honestly, I wanted Icelandic sheep. I wanted them for the meat, the wool, and the milk. And that was my dream sheep. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to find them. But right now, I can't find them locally. So we found some sheep. And when we found these sheep, we found them on an equestrian farm. So the sheep ate their diet of whatever grass that grew, and then the horses were, they eat the same and different, I'm sure. So they complemented each other on this equestrian farm. And our first sheep were Jacob spotted sheep. So we took our Jacob spotted sheep home back in our 25 acres of woods and not pasture of woods. And so we had nothing set up at all. We had no fencing. We had no pen. We had no waterers. We had nothing. And we loaded these sheep up. I don't even know how we got them home. Usually what we do, y'all, seriously, is we will put them in some sort of crate or something, and they end up riding with us in a huge van. But we took these sheep home and we put them in a shed. We had a metal shed that had no light in it. So, in order for those poor sheep to have any light, we were going to have to makeshift something to leave the door open and them have light. And that's what we did. We just had to makeshift something. And those poor little sheep, they did us really well. They were troopers and they were awesome. That we had one ram and two ewes. And of course, they were Jacob's spotted. So his name was Jacob. And then we had Rachel and Leah. So that was our very beginning sheep operation. And I'll even tell you the extra part of I had no clue. I went to the feed store and I don't even know what I asked exactly, but I think I stated hay because I knew that much, but I didn't necessarily know visually the difference between hay and straw. Oh, because it was pretty close, but the consistency and the texture and stuff were definitely quite different. It just was like, I might not have raised sheep before, but this seems a little different. So I was feeding my poor sheep straw for probably a couple weeks until something happened at the feed store, and then they could finally be like, "No, that's straw. Where are you getting that?" Oh, but I asked for it. That's what they gave me. They gave me straw. I didn't go pick it out. So anyway, so I had to dream about not having that anymore. Those sheep I started with, I learned with. We grew from there and had lambs and um, watching the lambs bounce around and watching the moms, take turns being like, okay, mom, you have a break. I'll take all the babies. And they actually do that. It's like they have like a little babysitter for just a little while and while the other mama is feeding somewhere else close by. And, they just run and they're so calming. And they're carefree and they just remind you of what you wanna feel like. So I had to kind of think about if I moved, not having that anymore. So I had to undream in a way. And I was pretty close, my knee-jerk reaction is just like, "Be done." This is our chance. We can just move somewhere else and not do this over. And we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about the worries. But honestly, when it came down to real decision making, I could not see myself not having them. And that was the answer. I didn't want to not have those sheep. I didn't want to not have the ability to let my kids go outside and enjoy their own farm animals and make our own things. And again, you don't need the big farm for it. But what I ended up doing was when we did move, instead of going to like a town, I had a list of if we were going to homestead, this is the requirement, and just sticking with that list and be open minded, but having some parts of it that this is the bare minimum. And when we did move to Tennessee, that was one of the things. It's like, okay, we want woods and pasture. We don't want just woods. We want woods and pasture. And guess what? We found it. So, yes, all that for the lifestyle choice. I don't see myself not homesteading. You know, this is the original lifestyle choice. Why would I want to choose anything else? Because it's not natural. This is natural. This is how we're connected to each other, to the creator. This is what it was meant to be. So I would make sure I stuck with the lifestyle and why I want the lifestyle. And when things get rocky and tough, go back to that, like why you're doing what you're doing. And don't focus too much on making a living from the homestead, especially to start. So, somebody keep the day job, not necessarily you, but one of you keep the day job and the other one take on the homestead as your job. So, another thing is like money for our budgeting or something like that for land or equipment or expenses. And honestly, what I could say from my own experience is you just figure it out. If we try to save all the time for what ifs, then sometimes you're going to miss out on the right nows. And this is just for us. This isn't necessarily a recommendation for everyone, but we invest a lot. Like our time is an investment. So we invest our time, we invest our resources into building skills and knowledge and investments that will pay off, in time. Our land, as far as when we moved to this farm, we didn't necessarily, do a savings and budget for it. This was a loan from the bank, and we were going to live this life on this land. And equipment, we just figure it out. I will say, as far as equipment goes, you don't have to make it complicated. I mean, seriously, we went from 29 acres to 69 acres. And this is going to sound so crazy. I fought getting two things: one, a tractor, but even worse than that, a riding lawnmower. Our front yard is probably an acre. And we had 2 push mowers. I hate to say this, but it's true. We had 2 push mowers because I don't know. Yes, we had the bigger property. It was like, "No, no, no, we can make this work. We don't have to get the riding lawnmower. We can get the couple $100 push mowers." Totally not a good idea. I mean, it was so bad the neighbor down the road came over and started mowing with all of us that were mowing with push mowers. It was pretty funny. But as far as tractors, I fought not getting a tractor either, because there are some homesteads and some farms that are like tractor free, and I kind of idealize that. But as far as an investment for your farm and for you, I would say some sort of multifunctional locomotive or transportation on the farm is actually a good investment. So either some sort of side by side gator or something like that that you can definitely move around the farm. Um, I wouldn't do it for a small amount of land. I don't know that the investment in that would be worth it for me. But when you have, 69 to 200 acres like we have, I would definitely think that is an investment worth making. And the tractor is definitely one that, the side by side gator, whatever, I would definitely go for a tractor as well. Now, we started out, that was like baby steps for me. I had to start with the little one. Like, okay, we're going to get a subcompact tractor and we're going to start with that because, oh, no, no, we don't need a big tractor. We're not baling hay and we're not doing all that kind of stuff. But the one thing about the equipment is it needs to be quality because I don't know how to fix tractors and engines. Now, some of my kids do, but I personally don't know. I'm more of the experience, like, that sounds like when this happened kind of deal. But when you're running a tractor around a farm, it gets beat up. So that would be something to keep in mind. If you do want to budget for, saving up for equipment, those are two pieces of equipment I would do again. And depending on the size of your homestead, how much of a tractor do you really need? I wouldn't do too little and I wouldn't do too much, just like Goldilocks. So, as far as, ongoing expenses, I would definitely say that things are going to come up and you just figure it out, which is not a very good straightforward answer, but be creative. Think outside the box. How can you make it work? So just change that, like the question is, how do you budget for it? How do you budget for it? Like, what do you want? And then how are you going to budget and make it happen? That's kind of the twist on it is someone else isn't going to have the answer for you. It's going to be, how are you going to make it happen? How are you going to make it work? Whatever your situation is. So just change it from why or a dead end question and change it to how. How are you going to figure it out? Now, some people bring up grants and other government like subsidies and stuff. I can say I have never had a grant or any kind of subsidy of any kind. I've been in that group of folks that talk about it and that do. I know some folks can get grants and stuff for hoop houses and equipment, fencing, water. I mean, just like animal supplies and watering, or they'll have wells dug and the watering troughs and stuff that are all hooked up. Those are huge things. So if you think that's going to be the way that you want to go, there are grants for that. I don't know them because I haven't used them. Not to make it sound like I'm too good for a grant at all. I just have a thing with like wanting to do this from scratch and slowly build. And then I have this other thing in my head about, you hear people's stories. I don't know if this is true or not, but maybe it is, maybe it's not. But I remember a story from someone, maybe it was a tax exempt thing. Now I'm thinking about it. Either way, just check into it to see what are the requirements, not just to get it, but what are the requirements after you get it. Like if you have to have certain requirements fulfilled by a certain other time afterwards, those are all things to, look into. And if that's something you're up for, go for it. But as far as homesteading and finances, you don't need a huge bank account. You just need to homestead. You can homestead where you are. You don't have to move. Now, I get wanting to move, and we could talk about what to look for in your new homestead property if that's what you're wanting to do. But you don't have to move and you don't have to have a ton of money to start homesteading. I would stick with thinking of it as your lifestyle choice and why. Why do you want to homestead? And then the finances, you figure them out instead of thinking, you know, what about this equipment? I need to budget. Instead of being hard nosed about everything, just kind of almost take things as they come, because sometimes you could be saving up for your tractor and your car breaks. What are you going to do then? And you weren't saving up for repairs for that. But that's just my own personal experience for us and how we have come along with it. I definitely think that you don't have to have money in order to start homesteading because it's just a mindset. And I do think that if you have bigger plans than being in town and you want land and you want the space, I would definitely start small. I mean, if you can get a couple acres, you can do almost everything on a couple of acres. Garden, animals, you name it, bees, of course, anything in the home that you have your home on that couple of acres. I would start small if I could, unless you are just like a go getter. And if you are, I get it. I am like a jump in the deep end person sometimes with this homesteading stuff and figure out how to swim as I go. But I get it. And I just want you to know that you don't have to think you have to have a huge bank account in order to homestead. You homestead right where you are and think of this as your lifestyle and learn to live with this being your lifestyle and kind of have pride with it, not in the sense that you're better than anyone else, but this is actually the most beautiful lifestyle you can have. It's the most natural, creative, back to basics lifestyle that has actually built up some of the most well known people in the world because they had this kind of lifestyle as their growing up years. So that's what I would say on how do you make homesteading work financially, at least to start out. But other than that, make sure you are on the email list at thehappyhomesteadmaker.com, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.